Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm your host, Suze, and with me, as always, are my beautiful co-hosts, Tammy and Ash, and of course, our young Jamie Dave from Perception Correction. Back at it, rolling my joints. How are you all doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm just over here being a Freemason Satanist. So,
I was
good
gonna
times.
bring that up. Yes,
Good times.
I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I just drove from South Carolina, so I'm great, but holy shit, I don't know about road trips anymore. I think I'm old.
Welcome back to China.
Yeah, I know. It's actually the first time that I wasn't exactly excited to come back to Canada. Normally we're like, yay, we're back in Canada, our homeland, and now we're like, bleh.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yep.
Dave?
I'm terrific, and my 33rd degree Mason leader, Tammy, told me I was doing a great job, so I'm even more terrific because I'm trying to climb the ladder in the masonry thing.
Yes. So as Tammy mentioned, I recently got upgraded from fake Russian bot to fake Russian Freemason satanic witch Jew bot. So, I'm obviously doing excellent. That's like a 5-tier upgrade overnight. I'm not exactly sure what the fuck I did to get upgraded, but hey. And as Tammy mentioned, both you and Ash have also been upgraded to Freemason witches too. So I think it's maybe time to dust off the old spell book.
I don't know though. I think I'm like basic witch. Like this person doesn't really want to interact with me. Like I barely have a broomstick.
No, it's in the shop.
I'm disappointed. Yeah. Like I don't know. Can I play Quidditch or no?
I don't know. Tammy, you feeling witchy?
I mean, yeah.
Right? I'm all for it, man. I love it. Anyways, we also have a special guest with us this evening, my good friend from Twitter X. Her and I had our first podcasting together experience over on the Big Puff podcast, so be sure to check them out. Today we're going to have her on to have a little chat about red pilling our kids, and we'll probably do a little freestyling as well about all the crazy current events. Welcome, Natasha, to the show. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us, and how are you this fine evening?
Thank you for having me. I am excited to be here, and I'm very well, thank you. It's been an extremely hectic past 4 or 5 years.
Yep. I'm sure it has. Quick question. Have you also been accused of being a Freemason witch? I'm just curious.
I think he just blocked me.
Oh.
I don't know this guy, but every once in a while, if I'm introduced to this kind of thing, I like to throw in a snarky remark here and there. But
I didn't, Natasha? No way.
No, never. Never.
But I didn't follow the entire course of his descent into madness with his obsession with you. It was lengthy.
It was
like
fun.
It was a real time investment.
It was quite entertaining.
It started during the whole Picton pig farm thing is when he surfaced. Yeah, so this has been going on since like May, and then now he's just welcomed the whole group, which is really nice to not be alone. So
yes,
well, it actually, include the whole coven.
Exactly, right? It was funny because he started, I think, too, like this time around, he started with Wabbit because Wabbit posted about his the anniversary of his father's passing, which is 33 years ago. And he was like,
gosh,
33, blah, blah, blah. And Wabbit's like, he died in 1991. Do the math, man. Like, and then
notice this account never picks on anything remotely left-leaning.
Right? It's quite strange.
Sorry, I just had to say that.
Strange. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a quick question before we get into all things awesome about our guest here. I heard shortly before I jumped on here that there was apparently another Trump assassination attempt at a Florida golf course. Has anyone heard this? Do we have any confirmation or anything on this situation?
Yeah, it's confirmed by Trump's people.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah, CNN's rolling with it too. They're not. What was it last time?
He fell down.
Trump hit the floor. No, Secret Service got in the way or something like that. Or yeah, I don't know. The headlines were ridiculous in the beginning of the first or the last.
He fell down. Well, I did see someone post that, of course, his can't remember who was that posted it now, that of course his apparently, I guess they caught whoever it was, and they're saying that it was a, far left trans activists. Of course. Let's blame it on them. Anyways, enough about Trump.
to be determined. Like, they failed with trying to silence or censor people, I guess, during COVID, and like right now, I guess their thing, or it's been a thing for a while, where they're just trying to flood with misinformation. So we got to keep our heads on a swivel. So
I have a thing here. So it says suspect Ryan Wesley Ruth is a Democrat. He was allegedly hiding in the bushes with an AK-47 with a scope, 2 backpacks, and a GoPro, and was spotted by the Secret Service before he could take action. Now, whether or not this is true, I don't know.
Wait. It says before he could take action, so like meaning he didn't fire any shots?
Apparently, it doesn't look like.
Because I saw a headline that said shots fired at Florida golf course.
Too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, see, this is what I mean. The new game is flooding it with so much information that you don't know what's real.
Like everything
else. See, I do see one that says shots fired at Trump International Golf Club.
Mm-hmm.
They tried again to kill him. La la la. Yeah, I don't know. So it looks like, maybe there was some shots fired or whatever, but they know who the guy is and he's been caught.
Huh. Well, we'll see when the third attempt is, because I feel like it's not going to end.
Did you just say third as in 3?
Oh, no.
Oh!
Probably with a brick wall behind you.
Obviously, I got a brick wall behind you. I'm not going to show you guys because, that's some witchcraft shit and you don't want to know what's going to happen if I do. But yeah, there's a brick wall behind me. Natasha's probably like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
No, that one I saw. I saw the brick wall thing. I think I put up a photo of myself with a brick wall.
Oh, yeah, you did.
My last hotel room I was in had like reptilian wallpaper, and I was like, oh boy, what would they say about this?
But are you guys looking to the left?
So I was going to comment on this because Natasha's photo, she's looking to the right, and that is obviously a sign of reptilianism, Freemason, Satanist witchery.
Obviously.
Welcome to the coven, my witchy friend.
If you know, you know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, Natasha, I wanted to do a quick spotlight on your Twitter page, which is at Natasha Montreal. You always have great, thought out, very informative posts and great opinions on things. You speak on a variety of topics like politics and social issues, and you always stand by what you say, which is what I love about you and kind of what gave me, the red pilling idea for tonight in the first place. So for any of our listeners who may not know you or know your page, tell us what brought you over to Twitter X in the first place. Please.
My Twitter X origin story. This is for all my hate follows. I have to say, they make me feel loved. Like they love to hate me, and I appreciate their consistency. So here's the origin story of my villainy. Like at least some of you in the show, I was against the COVID regime from before it began. So the one of the highest points of stress, I can't really pinpoint only one, but one of the highest points of stress for me with regards to the COVID regime was before the lockdowns began, because I could see what was coming and I was trying to alert everybody. And so naturally people thought I was crazy, because it was like our supply chain, this is going to be at least 10 years. This is the consolidation of all of the institutions and power over us. And people thought I was a nut. But like, to me, it was just so obvious. So I was sending people information. And I realized that a lot of the information that the articles I would read, they would link back to Twitter. And I wasn't on Twitter. So initially I went on Twitter just to read, like to get access to different academics, to see, because people are, the trust the experts kind of traumatized people, but we do have excellent experts. They're just not this state chosen experts.
Yeah,
Like there were experts who were against the tyranny from the beginning.
right.
So I was reading them, and initially I was not even posting anything or commenting. I was just reading, and I had one of those like numbered accounts, with no real name or anything.
Yeah, right,
And,
right.
and then I started making some comments, but I stayed anonymous because as some of you may know, I was sued with family law torture during the COVID regime in August 2021, so well before the convoy even started. So I locked my account during that time. And then once the court case finished 9 months later and the judgment came in, then I unlocked my account and left anonymity behind. So that's my kind of Twitter origin story. So I think I had 400 followers in June 2022, and I just passed the 20,000 follower threshold recently, which was kind of fun. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great page. I love your posts. You always have these like great threads and everything. So keep doing what you're doing. You're also from good old woke ass Quebec, and we've spoken to some other Quebecers. But can you give us some of the lunacy kind of challenges you are specifically facing in the Quebec region?
Oh man, so Quebec is the most socialist province for non-Canadians who may not know this. One thing I'll say about Quebecers, though, and which I repeat often, is that even though it's the most socialist province with the least educated population, the rabble rousers, which I would, estimate are about 10% of the population, are beyond rabble rousing. So that is one thing that is a saving grace of this hellscape province. The people who are critical of the state are highly critical, and people are far more outspoken in Quebec than in the rest of Canada.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like my opinions aren't shocking to people, to the average Quebecer at all. These are normal, like my anti-immigration, my pro-Canadian nationalism. None of this is shocking to Quebecers because the province is founded on the concept of being a distinct culture and being very aggressive about defending the French language, mainly from Anglophones, not from foreigners. So that's a little bit frustrating. Anglophones who speak French, us. But yeah, so I think it's a far more like you're far more capable of expressing strong political opinions in Quebec. But if you go against the state, as I discovered in my lawfare case, they will crush you like in every other province. So it's not the place I would choose to live. I'm here for the foreseeable future, and the second I can leave, I will.
Well, I hope you get out sooner than later.
Thank you. And yeah, to answer your question about what's coming down the pipeline, a lot of Quebecers don't know, and this kind of dovetails into the topic today, but a lot of Quebecers don't realize that we are going to have the same insane transanity in the schools that you have in Ontario. The pilot project, my child's school was part of the pilot project for the transanity project. And so not every school has experienced it yet. Some are in their second year, some are in their third year. Some haven't done it yet. They're just now bringing it into the schools. So I think that Quebecers are going to have a rude awakening this year for the ones whose schools are beginning to launch their transanity in the classroom. It's absolutely evil and mind-bogglingly astonishing to me that educators are willing to do this to kids. But here we are.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Like, I'm fortunate, at least for now. Like, my kid's school is not, not there. And I've said this before. I don't know if it's because it's a Catholic school in a remote area, Because I've heard of other Catholic schools that do have that stuff in it, right? But so far, my kid's school doesn't. But I always fear that like it's around the corner, any day now type thing, right? So
yeah, and it can be sneaky depending on the teacher as well. The way the program is set up in Quebec is that the teachers are supposed to weave it into other lessons. And that makes it impossible for parents to opt out, right? Because it's just kind of casually mentioned throughout the day at different points. So it's diabolical, really.
I think when we had Frozen Belle on, I think she mentioned the same thing out in BC in the schools there, that they basically have added it to every single curriculum.
Yeah, that's how they do it. It's clever if you're evil.
For sure. For sure.
Since you're talking about your child at school and stuff, I pulled up. I could be jumping the gun here. Your tweet of this week. I received the following email from my child's teacher.
Yeah, that covers last year. In another grade, the 6 and 7-year-olds were taught about like all the gender nonsense that a man can become a woman, so on and so forth. Men can get pregnant. That was for 6 and 7-year-olds. This post was about the so-called sexual aggression lessons, in which the teacher told the class about 3 different scenarios, and the most heinous scenario involved a hockey coach having one of the children undress in front of him in the locker room, and then the hockey coach touched the boy's penis. And my child was so upset that she didn't even want to tell me what was said in class, because it was scary and
she didn't want
traumatic.
to
She didn't want to repeat it. She was so distressed about it. And planting those kinds of seeds in children's minds can't be unplanted. It's so wicked. And my level of frustration can't be any higher, because there's absolutely no need to traumatize children in order to safeguard them. Exactly. And I would argue that introducing this kind of sexually explicit material to them sexualizes them rather than protects them. You can give them very clear instructions that they can understand, which aren't scary, which are your private parts are private. Nobody touches your bathing suit parts, even a doctor, unless mommy or daddy is there. You can give them very, very clear instructions that vary depending on their age and depending on the circumstances. But that's for the parent to decide. They know their child. They know the scenarios that their own child may be in. It isn't up to some kook at the school who isn't even teaching children properly, how to write in cursive and basic Canadian history, but has embarked on this kind of really, it's almost like a religious endeavor with these people. They really do think that they're saving them. It's very dark.
It is. It really is. Let's go into let's show everybody how red-pilled your child is, because I absolutely love it. And I know you always joke and you're like, my kid will red pill your kid in 20 minutes.
It really does happen. Yeah.
So Dave, could you bring up Natasha's tweets?
The one with holding a sign?
The biking path. Yeah, the flag. Yeah.
Talking amongst yourselves, please.
Oh, okay. So how's everyone?
Right?
Oh boy, come on, Dave. What the heck, man?
That's what you get when you have a keener who posts way too many stuff.
Are you thinking of the one when we were going past?
No, that's not
Ottawa.
No, the one I sent you, Dave. Yes, I did.
You didn't send me one.
Uh-oh.
Nope.
Oh my God, okay, I'm sending it to you right now. Oops.
You sent me one about Coutts. You sent me one about yourself, and then biking past the
That
home
one,
encampment.
yes,
That
thank
one.
you.
Yeah, I was literally looking for a picture of a kid. That's why.
I would never in a million years put any pictures of my child up on Twitter. I get
True.
threats on X fairly regularly.
Here
Yes.
we
So,
are.
Natasha, you put out this tweet, which was amazing, where you wrote, biking past a homeless encampment, we noticed a Canadian flag has been planted beside the tent. Your kid says, oh, he put a flag up. And you said, seems strange given that he's homeless. I guess he's a patriot. Your kid replied with, what does patriot mean? And you said, people are patriotic if they love their country. And your kid replied with, I wonder if he likes the communist shit part of the country or the good part. Which was amazing. Right? And then, you get this, and then the hate starts to come, right? And like, I've had this happen too, because people are trying to say, like, we can't even explain to our kids what communism is, right? So you got this guy that comes and he's like, respectfully, if this is true, maybe you shouldn't have some conversations in front of your kids. Let kids be kids while they can. They have a horrifying future ahead of them. Yes, they do have a horrifying future ahead of them, which is exactly why I then commented and replied, I completely disagree with you. Because if a child is age appropriate for certain topics, then we need to be preparing them for the horrifying future you yourself stated is ahead of them.
Absolutely.
Like, how am I wrong? I'm not wrong. Like, the kids are going to encounter certain things. They need to know how to navigate through this.
Yes, at a young age, when my child was at a young age, my mom gave me very good advice because I was struggling with the balance between providing her with enough information so that she'd be able to protect her mind from bad ideas and crushing her innocence. And what she said to me was, if you live in the bush, you teach your children about the threats. You teach them about the bears, you teach them about wild animals, you teach them, about that kind of thing. And in your current environment, you teach them about the threats. You teach them about transanity. You teach them about people who are trying to brainwash her. And I think that's absolutely correct. It doesn't need to be done all the time in a heavy way. You're not sitting your child down and let me paint a picture of the Soviet gulags. Like, it's that's not what it is. You're able to explain things in a way like, oh, some people think that men can become women. Isn't that silly? Oh, that's so funny. You're going to hear that sometimes, and don't worry, don't let it bother you because it's just so silly. And people are allowed to have their silly opinions, and we just don't believe in that. That's not part of our values. This is how you present things. It doesn't have to be a terrifying experience. And I would argue that if you send your child unarmed because you're trying to preserve their innocence in a world that is corrupt and is not innocent and has no respect for their innocence, into a situation where the first information they're going to hear on a topic is woke progressive claptrap, then you are not doing your job as a parent.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. And that kind of ties in. Sorry, go ahead, Ash.
Something that I'm not even a parent, I'm an auntie, but something that just drives me nuts is the ideology that parents don't know anything about their own children and how to be good parents. They're taking the example of some of the worst parents within society and trying to use them as the example for why we need big daddy government to come in and help us govern our children. Because sometimes, yes, there can be horrible parenting out there. It's true. But the fact that now they're using that as the example for why no parent should have any rights is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I would add to that the madness that's going on, the encroachment on parental rights, doesn't protect the children of horrible parents. I mean, I read a case. I don't even know if I can talk about it, to be honest, and keep my composure, but it was a case of child abuse in Quebec that was the most egregious child abuse case in Quebec I'd ever heard of. I couldn't sleep after I read about it. I couldn't sleep that night. I was like, I thought I was going to be physically sick. And that child was in the system. They were being watched. So the services don't protect the children who need protecting. All this does is this approach, it ruins the relationships in some cases between excellent parents and troubled children. In the case of the transanity, when parents are trying to protect their children from making irreversible choices. So it alienates the parents. It makes parents feel insecure about their God-given intuition.
Mm-hmm.
It makes parents think that they need to turn to so-called experts. They're the expert on, like, I'm the expert on my own child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my being an expert and an excellent mother in no way affects a horrible parent. That horrible parent is still going to be a horrible parent, and the state can't even keep the children safe when they're actually involved in these child protection cases. So they can really just bugger off and stay right out of my life is my opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Tammy, I know you've gone down the rabbit holes of children that need protecting and our amazing institutions that are there supposedly protecting them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're not.
Plain and
They're not.
simple. They're not.
Yeah, that's a pretty black and white one for me. So in most cases, at least in terms of what I've been looking into over the last several months, in most cases, the children are being abused, within the system. So whether it be foster care, that's not to say every foster parent is doing that, but through the foster care system, CAS, in our government run institutions, and that's probably the worst. A lot of people think that children were only abused in the residential schools. And I believe personally that they've used that as a tool to kind of divide the population. So, we were wronged more kind of thing. But as it turns out, if you look hard enough, and you really actually don't have to look hard at all, children of all ethnicities are being abused in Canada and have been for decades and decades by these institutions. And Ashley can speak to it quite a bit as well, because her and I kind of went down a rabbit hole on it one Saturday morning, and we found just looking for a couple hours together, we found, I want to say, somewhere around 10 schools. Ash?
Yep. Yeah, it was,
Oh, wow.
well, I mean, we had to stop because it was enough to look into those 10 schools where it's like, okay, how far down the rabbit hole do we need to go to find the rest? I mean, it's not hard to find them, but you have to kind of give it the due diligence. And, we stopped before I think we could find even a small portion of them.
Are you talking about boarding schools?
We're talking about training schools for girls. So the one probably closest to all of us here in Ontario is Cambridge, it was actually Galt at the time, but the Grandview Training School for Girls, the Jericho School for the Deaf and the Blind out in BC. Oh my gosh, I could just start listing a bunch of them. It's
what about the one in
not
Toronto for the boys? The one where Creepster went.
Russell Williams and
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Toronto. Hang on, I have that somewhere.
St. George or something.
No, that I think you're thinking St. George in BC, where Chris Ingvaldson, where Luca Magnotta sent the foot.
Right.
No.
No, you're referring to. Hang on, I'm just
It's well
trying to
known.
find my.
Tammy's scouring through her notes over there.
I am.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to say, I just wasn't sure if you meant like exclusively boarding schools or any type of school.
Well, I mean,
Boarding
I'm sure it
schools would
could
be
be
a
any
part of
type
it
of
for
school,
sure.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Toronto's Upper Canada College.
That's it. Yeah.
So it was actually one of the housemasters, Douglas Brown, that was sexually abusing the boys. So it's where Paul Bernardo went. Was that Paul Bernardo? No, that was Russell Williams that went there.
Yeah.
And there was somebody else that went there with him, but I can't remember who. Anyways, yeah, so it's like right across the board. It was not isolated to, Indigenous children in the residential schools. At the exact same time as that was happening, they were abusing children across all of the government-run institutions in Canada. And I have I don't even know at this point how many tweets I've done about it, but I went through like a whole 2-week period where I was releasing something on every single school I could find. And each day was like a different school or a couple different schools.
And there's so many lawsuits going on, like still to this day, with these schools.
Yeah, we're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars the government has paid out in this.
Yeah.
And the really creepy one was the Grandview School for Girls, because that one was actually started by the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario's wife. And the girls were being raped, trafficked out of the school. I do know specifically of somebody who was trafficked, and they were trafficked to the Picton pig farm.
No.
Yeah. So this is why, like, when people are like, it wasn't a human trafficking thing, I'm like, no, it was. But they were having like the officers that were guarding it were having what do they call them? Like sex parties for all intensive purposes. And then they were getting the girls impregnated and then forcing them to abort the babies.
Oh my God.
And I can't remember how many girls actually died at the school, but there's a graveyard where the survivors actually still go. There's a whole documentary on the Grandview girls survivors. I had to like stop in parts because it's a very hard thing to watch and to listen to, but a lot of them they were so traumatized, they ended up with multiple personality disorder, similar to what happened with Kathy O'Brien.
But then you have to wonder too, like how much of that could also be equated to, say, MK Ultra, where if they were, within an institution that could possibly have access to what they were doing as far as MK Ultra experiments, something like multiple personality disorder could come out because of other sort of practices that were taking place there.
You're absolutely right. And I've thought about that numerous times. Like the training school for girls was actually operating between 1933 and 1976. So
prime time,
it was absolutely during the time of MK Ultra, and one of the major components of MK Ultra, and one of the most well-known sub-projects was Project Monarch, which was where they were actually traumatizing. It was mainly women and children, but they were traumatizing them until they would split their personalities. And what they were trying to do was take the other personality and essentially create like a what do they call
alter
it?
Ego or something type thing.
Yeah, but they were using them as like a carrier pigeon. So they would carry political messages in their other personality, and they were able to use words to bring them in and out of that personality.
Right,
and this is this sounds super hokey for anybody listening, but this is actually like real life, true shit. You can look it up. There is numerous documents. A lot of the stuff was destroyed by the head of the CIA in 1973 when it became public, but there is quite a few documents still out there that discuss these projects, and it was very, very real.
So as you can see, Natasha, the institutes institutions that you speak of are not protecting the children. Clearly.
Thank you for letting us have that tangent.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's the hospitals too with those experiments. I have a
Yes.
client who is an elderly doctor, and one of his colleagues had, unbeknownst to him, been doing human experiments on mental patients. So imagine that you're going in for care, and then it's so diabolical. It's so wicked to have people trying to make you even more paranoid, and just it's so abusive, and most Canadians, I don't think, are aware of these different stories of institutions. There's only certain institutional corruption or scandals that capture the Canadian mind, and others don't. And it's mainly just to advance more DEI and more, SDGs and more state control. It's not because anybody, really cares about the victims very much, I don't think. Or perhaps some people do, but.
And it's also like a limited hangout, right? They're going to just give us a little bit of information to make it seem like they're telling us stuff, but there's still so much that is left to uncover, right?
100%. Like how MK Ultra is still going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that was a fun tangent. Thank you very much. Let's go back to see some amazing red-pilled children. Are you ready, Dave? Show us the
Dave, did you get enough
amazing
time?
Dave, show us the smart, amazing little boy from somewhere in the States.
Is Dave gone? Dave, are you with us?
No, Dave's
here. I'm here.
And don't mind my mug there.
Nice brick.
Oh, I see. Is that
who has prepped her son for kindergarten? Take a look.
Okay, Boogie, how many genders are there?
2.
2. And you are?
Boy.
Can you be a girl?
No.
Good. Can girls be boys?
No.
Okay. What do you say if someone starts talking about being transgender or gay?
This is not appropriate conversation.
Good. And what do we say? Drugs
are losers and communism doesn't work.
Good job, baby. Ready for kindergarten?
Now, kudos to her. She's done a fantastic job. This boy.
So, thoughts on the smart, amazing little boy?
Yes, I agree.
Communism doesn't work. I love that.
I know, right? I'm like, I fucking love it. But I did.
If they're going to go after the kids that young, you might as well start teaching them that stuff that young. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to try to do? Teach them that stuff when they're 14? Meanwhile, the bad guys are already trying to get at them when they're in JK. It's a losing formula.
And that brings me to like a comment that I actually got on that post where it says, I don't know if I fully agree with this approach. I don't want my children learning about that stuff at all, let alone have to tell them in order to teach them to avoid it. This is why I homeschool. We avoid it altogether until they are old enough. And it's like, I get it, but there's an age-appropriate way to do this, and I still think it needs to be done. Like, kids will have to navigate their way through this shit at some point, so don't let someone else get to them first.
Yeah.
It's also like, okay, homeschooling is great. I would love to do that. I can't. Most people wouldn't necessarily be very good at it, I don't think. It's definitely not for everybody. But even if your kids are being homeschooled, do they live in a literal bubble? Because I don't know, for the past 6 months, walking around the streets of Montreal, you would have to be blind not to see the corporate rainbows absolutely everywhere. It is transanity everywhere. Either your child is not paying attention to anything around them, and you have bigger problems because your child is not noticing things that any child would notice, or you might live in a really remote location, just hunkered down with no other people around. But it's not possible to live in a bubble.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also think that it's a quaint idea to think that we don't need to teach our children about these things. You know, they need to grow up within, like a lovely idea of what childhood is. And that would be great. But the problem is that we do have communists who are trying to take over our lives. And so, yeah, it would be nice if we didn't have to teach children about these things, except for the fact that we actually literally have communism being shoved down our throats. So yeah, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to teach kids about these things. But of course, it's the communists who don't want us to teach kids about this because they don't want it exposed.
Exactly.
You hit the nail on the head. They say that children are too young to hear the concepts, and then they're the ones who are exposing the concepts to the kids, and they understand that it's first to the post. Like there's in a biblical parenting book I read, they explain the concept that the first time a child hears something, it makes a large impact, and they're more likely to believe the first explanation than subsequent explanations. So there's a reason why they're moving in pedagogy to younger and younger and younger children, trying to infect them with a woke mind virus. It is by design. We're not dealing with a stupid enemy. People say, that they're stupid all the time. No, these people are strategic, and they've been working on a Marxist dialectic for 100 years, for longer, really, since the French Revolution. And we've been kind of conservatives or populists or people critical of the state, libertarians, whatever, the tent that is opposed to statism and managerialism, have been absolutely asleep at the wheel for most of this period of time, because there was still a hangover from when things worked well, so that things were getting weird. But people like stability. People like to live in a functional society where we don't need each other. I like that too. I'm anti-cannibalism, anti-anarchy. But so the trade-off is always, okay, you're going to have some of your liberties diminished for great security, and that seemed to be the compromise that worked for most Canadians. But the communism has accelerated so quickly now. It's become so overt that even the most clueless, naive, apolitical people are starting to ask questions. So that to me is very encouraging. But I don't want to go on an endless rant, but I'll say, like, if there's one thing that people are going to do in this fight for civilization, for what is good and right, the number one most important priority is to raise your kids properly. Nothing matters more. Nothing. So
Absolutely.
if you're giving that up to the woke Marxists because you're trying to preserve a childhood that they don't have access to anymore, because it's being obliterated as a concept, and you're holding on to that, then you're really doing them a tremendous disservice. And you can spend all day online shouting about what matters to adults, but you're not going to be the person who is raising up a child who is going to be able to see the totalitarianism for what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And do you know what will ruin a childhood quicker than anything else? Communism.
Absolutely.
Communism, getting your penis chopped off, being pumped full of hormones,
Yeah.
being told that your future is hopeless by a bunch of horrible managers who want to control every aspect of your life. Like, all of that is soul destroying, but we have good alternatives to that on our side.
Yeah. For sure. It's like also like in a perfect world, I would love to not be able to teach my kids about bad people out there that may try to kidnap them. But the reality is I have no choice, right? Like they have to be aware of their surroundings and know that these bad things do happen, right? So yeah, teach this generation, raise this generation properly. And they're, like I said, I think in that post, they're the only ones, our only way out of this mess is that generation. And we need to make sure we do a good job with them.
Yeah, I think so too. I was also thinking of other ways that these lessons come in, and also this notion of the fragility of the child, which is very strange to anybody who is raised Christian, because we know that the stories of the Bible are quite violent. And so this idea that this ancient wisdom that's 2,000 years old, that our children were not supposed to be told this ancient wisdom, and that it somehow damaged all of the children of the past who were exposed to it as children, and made them, emotional emotional cripples or whatever, seems very farcical to me. It's just argument after argument to try to disenfranchise parents from their job, which is to parent.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't find it persuasive. And then there's another example I was thinking of now my neighborhood, which is, I'd say, one of the more, like, I don't know, maybe upper middle income neighborhoods in Montreal, has quite a lot of homeless now. And so whereas when my child was younger, it wasn't something that we dealt with on a daily basis. I didn't have to necessarily have discussions as a toddler,
Yeah.
But now we go by an encampment every day. So it's part of our everyday lives. We're approached in the car consistently. We're approached on the street consistently. I'd say at least once a week.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
what are you going to do? So obviously, I want to inform that discussion and have a broader discussion about mental health and about drug use and about the economy and about choices in life, about what's under our control, what isn't, about grace for other people. Like it doesn't have to be like a horrible thing. It can be like just you teach your child, right, how to navigate the world and morality in different ways, and you have hard conversations. Like I don't understand why parents think that having substantive conversations with their children is such a threatening thing to do. It's very strange to me.
Yeah, isn't that a part of parenthood, is to actually connect with your kids on that type of a level?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
For sure.
when they're ready for it, but I mean, the whole way along from when they first talking to when they're grown up and they're adults. I mean, that's a part of your connection with your children. And again, this is just me talking as someone who doesn't even have kids, but I know how to talk to kids, my nieces and nephews, and my friends' children, and that's a part of socializing them is how to navigate these tricky things that come up within life. I mean, it's kind of one of the beauties of having children around, is seeing things from a different perspective and then explaining those things to younger people.
I actually had a pretty challenging conversation last night with my daughter, which I wasn't actually prepared and wanting to have, and it was complete by accident. But my mother was over, and I was having a conversation with my mom about the whole people are eating dogs and cats, and I ended up I was having a conversation with her and not realizing that my kid was listening. And then at night, when she went to go to sleep, she came down crying because, and I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, I heard you and Vovo talking about the people eating dogs and cats, and it made me sad because she's an animal lover, and I don't even remember what the heck me and my mom were saying exactly, but whatever it was, I'm sure it was nothing I wanted her specifically to hear, right? Like so that was now like I had to navigate through that, right? But yeah, we do have to have these tough conversations. They come up, right? Like they come up. And as parents, it's our job to navigate through them.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I was raised different. Well, I definitely was raised differently than most people, but I can say that I don't get into details about my family because of psychos, but we were brought to Dachau when we were young. We lived in West Germany, and it's a concentration camp. We were taken to all the historical sites. We were taken to the places where Canadians were involved in fighting. This was considered a normal part of educating your child when I was growing up. I read Animal Farm when I was in grade 3. I was a voracious reader, and I had older siblings, and so there would be books lying around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would, read what was around.
Yeah.
And it didn't harm me. I don't think I understood all of the nuances of the book, when I was 8, but I did get the main themes. And I think if children are intellectually developed enough and taught things in an emotionally appropriate way, then you can navigate a lot of these tough topics and inform them. And one thing that has been very positive is my child's passionate about history. And so there are some really excellent history podcasts. And when I've shared them with friends, they've said, "Oh my gosh, like this one that I like is called History Story Time." It's a little bit woke, but it's mainly historically accurate. They don't editorialize too much in it. So it's really an excellent podcast. And what I've noticed is that she will talk to her friends about different things that have happened in history. And for example, we watched the movie The Sound of Music, which is, for people who may not have seen it, it's a musical that centers around the Second World War. But she could place the history and understood it, whereas her friend who was watching it with us was confused at times. And so I'd pause to explain, but then, my daughter could explain it. So it's wonderful to see your child growing and developing and blossoming, and knowing that you are directly impacting their framework for the world. You're giving them a framework through which to analyze things, and they may not end up with the same values that you have, but I believe that part of your job as a parent is to try to instill the same values that you have. You want your values to carry on. You want your family traditions to carry on, so on and so forth. So I think when people look at it as like this, oh, you're black pilling your child. Like, no, maybe you would in that conversation, but there are ways to have these conversations that are very much white pill.
Right.
And it's very much like we do things this way, and that's wonderful and that's joyful. And oh, silly, that's fine. Like, people can be silly if they want. But I don't think it needs to be seen as such a heavy, horrible thing. And Ash, I hear you on sometimes, and also Tammy. I hear sometimes people who aren't parents saying, like, "I'm not a parent," but like, you have eyes, you observe children, people, you spend time with children, like, you're allowed to have opinions.
Thank you for that. That is very validating, and I actually appreciate that.
It's true.
You're welcome. Like, I've never understood. Like, maybe somebody who is not a parent wouldn't like come in heavy with a really strong opinion on, like, I don't know, a sleep schedule for a toddler or something, because they might not have as much experience. But like, all of this stuff is definitely open to every person who's part of society. Like, children matter, whether or not you're a parent, and you get to have opinions.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and something that I've actually noticed is, with our nieces and nephews and even our friends' kids, that we actually call them nieces and nephews because they're close enough to us that they are that to us. And for us, as the auntie and uncle, we have a very special relationship to them because we're not the parents. So yeah, we make chocolate chip pancakes with them, when they're kids. And so we've grown up with them in a different way than their parents, but we respect the way that they've raised their kids. So we follow those value systems, but yet we get to be like another trusted adult that kind of helps them to see the world in a certain way. And so it's very important to have people who even aren't just the parents of children who can share, a value system that makes sense to them. And so, like, yes, like, of course, parents are the most important, within a child's lifetime, but there is a space for people who can fill the other roles. And let's just say, like, it's not teachers anymore, because obviously they have an agenda that isn't for the children.
Yeah, they're compromised.
Yeah.
Just like the politicians.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that. And it's, I would add, it made me think when you were speaking, Ash, that it's very important to have a good social network. Like I hear from a lot of people in DMs and things who are totally socially isolated. And part of the reason I think that they're socially isolated is because they don't express their opinions. So you're never going to meet anybody in real life who's aligned with you if you never express your opinions on anything. It's impossible. They're not just going to intuit that you think the same way that they think. Like I had to make a lot of new friends due to the COVID regime.
Yeah.
And some of my older friendships lasted, but many didn't. And so I have a broader community now, and that's wonderful. But I didn't build the new friendships by not expressing what I think. Everybody knows what I think who meets me, and I'm comfortable even if I'm spending time with friends who don't agree with me on anything. I'm comfortable because I know that I'm 100% myself with them. But having said that, I've been fostering relationships as well, specifically with people with similar values and with similar outlooks, because it's very healthy for my child to be around people who are like-minded. We see the world the same way. And then we don't have to have all of the heavy conversations as much because we're very aligned, but that helps to reinforce the teachings in the home. If I teach one thing and then my child never sees it reflected in anybody else's values, opinions, actions, or lifestyles outside of our home, it's not going to make sense to her. So what you said, Ash, is really, really important, like having trusted friends with similar values. Like Suze and I, when we met, we went to an event that you went to as well, Ash.
Yep.
And,
At Wabbit's
you know,
house.
exactly. Yeah, I didn't know if like that was incognito or not. I
No,
guess.
no, yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
Oh no, we like posted photos of it. I guess it wasn't that subtle, you know. But Suze and I both brought our children. So, like, to me, it was important for my child to spend time around other people who are like minded and like a really fun family environment. I think that's another thing that parents need to do. And like, I go to church with my child every Sunday. I found a non woke church to go to. And it might be a little bit more I'd say that the church is more say strict in their interpretation than my own interpretation of the Bible would be. But I think that's fantastic. I would rather have something more traditional than less. Like you can always soften things a bit, but it's really hard to go the other way.
Yeah,
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it needs to be reinforced. It can't just be conversations. It needs to be trusted adults. It needs to be a broader community. It needs to be spending time with, other children who are raised by people with the same values, so that you're giving to your child really an entire culture of how to be in the world and protecting them from the communist woke managerial state scourge that we all live in now. You know.
absolutely. So, in summary, red and white pill your kids, everybody. Build a community and integrate your kids into those like-minded villages. Right?
Amen. Amen.
Agreed.
Amen.
Agreed.
Tammy, or Dave, do you have any like additional thoughts on the red pilling and white pilling of the children at young ages? Are we stealing their innocence?
No, I'm sticking with if the bad guys are getting at them at a certain age, you got to at least start at that age too, right? Like, what are you going to do if you don't? You're already behind in the battle, and I consider the battle that's being talked about here the good side. So I don't want the bad side to win.
I've been red pilling my niece for like some time now.
Nice.
And I just do it in cool ways. Like, I'm careful because I'm not the parent, right? So, I'm careful like what exactly I will and will not discuss with them. But like as an example, my niece will come over for sleepovers, and we'll go out and we'll get snacks at the grocery store. And the most recent example was she happened to see like the magazine headlines that were, when you get to the checkout or whatever. And she made a comment to, about one of the things. And I just said, those are garbage. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I said, don't believe everything that you read. And I just in a very kind of lighthearted way tried to explain, what kind of media propaganda is. And just because you see it on the internet or, you see it on the TV doesn't mean that it's true. And I mean, she gets it. And I've posted about her many times because she's super smart, and she will just come up with these thoughts, and then she'll be like, Auntie Tammy, what do you think about this? Like, I know one of her big questions recently has been like the two, is there more than two gender things? And I just very very politely explained to her, like, no, there's not. And, some people may feel that way, but unfortunately that's not the truth, but, maybe they're confused or whatever. Right. And she gets it. And she knows that there's only two genders, and she's not hateful towards anybody that feels differently, but she's smart enough to know that it's very simple, basic biology. So I agree with red pilling children. I think there's great ways that you can do it. And honestly, I think like we need to get to them before the trust the experts people do.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, before our time gets away from us, I know we, Natasha, you wanted to touch on another subject or topic here quickly. So, we recently saw the final decision of the remaining Coutts prisoners. And Natasha, I know you were huge advocates for those men and followed their cases extremely closely. So I don't know if you want to speak a bit of your thoughts on the sentencing of the remaining men. Also, Dave, Natasha actually put out an amazing thread about that. If you wanna bring that up as well.
Sure do.
Yeah, thanks. I'm horrified. I'm horrified by what's happened to those men. They were absolutely railroaded by our Canadian supposed justice system, and it's really disconcerting that people just kind of have moved on with their lives and they've forgotten the men. And there was also a very unfortunate shit show, for lack of a better word, surrounding the fundraising due to some bad actors. And that has gotten in the way of their ability to raise legal fees, because there were accusations that were false leveled against one of their primary fundraisers, who's like a sweet lady who I've spoken to many times. And she had done amazing fundraising work for them out of the goodness of her heart. It kind of took over her life, I would say. So that's a problem that is an additional problem that they're having now, just within kind of the liberty-minded community of people being worried about donating, and they shouldn't be. There's Gord McGill does excellent work. He comes from the trucking industry himself. He writes for Newsweek, and he's written quite a lot and done some amazing advocacy work for them. So he had set up a fund for them. And I think it's been growing nicely. So that's great. But for people who don't know what happened, just to give the kind of soundbite overview for non-Canadians, I don't know if most of your audience is Canadian or not, but after 23 months of the COVID regime, Canadians had had enough, and the straw that broke the camel's back in the medical totalitarianism was when the federal government decided that the same truckers who had been delivering food and supplies all across North America for 23 months suddenly needed to get the so-called vaccine in order to continue doing their jobs and feeding their families. So the truckers organized, and then many people joined the truckers in solidarity. And it was the most successful workers' rights protests, I would argue, in Canadian history. And all eyes were on the Freedom Convoy. I had friends living abroad. Everybody was excited about this. Friends in Tokyo at the time who were delighted with what was happening because they couldn't believe what had been going on in Canada. And Trudeau was being publicly humiliated day in and day out, and the COVID regime was waning in popularity as people threw their support behind the Freedom Convoy. And so the federal government concocted a fake story about 4 men in Coutts who came to be became known as the Coutts Four. Saying that they were plotting to conspiring to kill RCMP officers. And that was allegedly based on undercover work by 2 officers, I think, that were kind of honeypotting, and based on like hyperbolic comments that one of them had made. And so they were found. 2 of them settled. They did not say that they were guilty for conspiring to kill an RCMP officer. They settled on lesser charges, and 2 decided to stay the course and go to court. And people have to bear in mind that these men were subjected to being in remand, which is like a horrible in between. It is not a prison. You don't have any of the rights the prisoners have. There are gangs. It is violent. They were in solitary confinement. One of them is huge, and he had like a little thin mattress to sleep on. One of them has celiac disease, and he wasn't, or a SIBO or one of those, and he wasn't given a proper diet, so he lost a ton of weight. Like just absolute torture, really torture of these men. So the 2 who didn't settle went to court, and they recently had their sentencing, even though they were found not guilty of conspiring against the RCMP officers. The judge still gave them 6.5-year sentences, and it's just such a gross miscarriage of justice. I can't underscore how disgusted I am by the so-called judge and by these people. And when you compare and contrast, because some people might say, okay, well, it was a minor weapons charge and a mischief charge. They're still applying the rule of law. Okay, well, I have news for you, Canadians. Violent people. A man got out. He was released. His charges were stayed. A man with an extremely long history of violence. He had had 60 run-ins with medical healthcare workers and with the police. He was out on bail, and he chopped someone's hand off. He stabbed that man, the same man whose hand he chopped off, in the head. And then he went and stabbed to death another victim. So we have violent offenders that are allowed out on our streets. What it really is a narco-tyranny where people who are trying to push back against the corrupt regime are punished for little errors or non-errors to the full extent of the law, and then violent sociopaths are not, and they're re-released over and over again. So the thread that Jamie had put up was a thread comparing the only actual non-police violence at the Freedom Convoy, which was David Alexander Zagarek, who drove a Jeep into 4 people. He ran someone over. And it was targeted, and he did it to injure them. And he sped up between people as he hit them, like a sociopath. And there were 11 charges against him, and he was released on bail, even though he resisted arrest. And he ended up finally going to court, and he is serving his less than 2-year sentence at home. After those charges, he was then brought up on charges for publishing intimate photos against a woman's wishes online. And then another victim came forward. So this is alleged. Another victim came forward and said that she found pornography of herself put up online that was made when she was 16 and was put up against her will.
Oh my God.
Yes, and he resisted arrest a second time and needed to be tasered 3 times. He injured a police officer. So when you compare violent people with non-violent people who were not found guilty of what they were accused of doing in the sentencing, it is chilling. It really is, to go through case by case. So yeah, I've been trying to do some comparative tweeting. That's a very long thread if people are interested, but I just wanted to shed some light. I don't want people to forget about the so very many victims of the COVID regime. I mean, people are still in court fighting ArriveCAN tickets.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to believe, but it's like, I don't want it to be memory hold. I don't want people to just say, oh, it doesn't matter anymore, let's move on.
I have a quick question regarding the Coutts, the 2 remaining Coutts men. Because I don't know much, like, enough about the system, but are they allowed, like, or able to appeal that sentencing?
Yes, and
They
I
are.
expect that they will. I don't know though how. I don't know. I know probably more about the law than the average person, but I don't know enough about the law to know, what the probability is. I know in general, your probability of winning an appeal is very low. In criminal cases, I just don't know. I mean, uh, these judges are biased. So like, people need to understand, judges they're not like a special class of people. They're just people like you and me. And the Liberal Party regularly selects liberal progressive judges. They see the way they rule over time. They see the donations that they give, and then they get their appointment. So it's just, you have to be a lawyer for 10 years to become a judge. That's it. And you're selected. And if you say yes, then you're a judge. So they are lawyers with, usually very friendly to the state. And I'm not saying every judge is corrupt at all. I'm just saying that most are.
And something that's really important to understand within the Canadian legal system is that a lot of our law is based on precedent. So the fact that these 2 men were found guilty of things that, I mean, the charges changed so much from the beginning, when they were brought into remand to where they've come to today. But the fact that they've been found guilty sets a precedent that is very ominous for the Canadian system in general.
Yeah, it does, and it's very frustrating, because once upon a time, like, I'm old enough to remember when progressives actually cared about this kind of corruption.
Yes.
And I wish that Canadians, regardless of their political leanings, would unite around this. It couldn't be more obvious. Like, I included an investigative report. That could be a whole other episode, so I'm not going to go into it very much, but I included it within the thread. An investigative report that I did. It took 2 weeks to do, on the funding of the biggest Muslim charity in Canada, and how it was being treated. There, it was a 151-page audit that I read through of the CRA that links this Muslim association to terrorist funding. And
I have it up on the screen right now.
So yeah, people can read about that if they want. But I attended some of these protests and recorded, and I was the only press at one of them. Like, I'm not the press.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm Natasha Montreal. Like, I'm just some woman. I'm a mom, right? So that was after the Ismail Haniyeh death, and they were shrieking Allahu Akbar over and over again. And in Ottawa, it's a different crowd that goes to these protests. You have like the Red Green Alliance. You have Transanity shows up. Antifa shows up. There were like 4 or 5 different communist flags that showed up. All these different groups. You have CUPE. You have unions. It's really an alliance of the red green, as the expression goes. But in Montreal, it was 90% Arabic people. So I stuck out like a sore thumb, and I was confronted by one of these terrorist sympathizers who was his face wasn't visible because he had a terrorist tablecloth wrapped around his face, and he was inches away from me. He didn't touch me, but he was very aggressive. And the police could not have cared less. And for most of the protests, the police weren't there at all. And I was getting chills up and down my arms as they were talking about basically destroying everybody who doesn't agree with them, regardless of their religion, Canadians. And anyway. So the two-tier justice is not just with regards to the Freedom Convoy. It's also, you think about the way people who protested against government tyranny, against an issue that's happening in our own country that was going on for 2 years, were treated, versus these foreigners who are being funded by all sorts of money pouring in from the IRGC, pouring in from Qatar, pouring in from the Soros Foundation, and they are treated with kid gloves. They can almost always get away with destroying statues. They have spray painted the Rodham Gates at McGill that are 100 years old. They have defaced statues. They have damaged things, toppled things. They have, one thing that I loved actually was they actually attacked the CBC. I was like, okay, we can agree on that one. Good job, boys, But can you imagine if the Freedom Convoy had done that? Like, imagine if the Freedom Convoy had descended on the CBC and smashed windows there. Like, just imagine.
Tammy, what do you call the CBC again?
The Church of CBC of Latter-day Broadcasts. The only trusted media source.
Right.
It's where COVID parent goes every Sunday.
Worship there. So yeah, the two-tier is happening across the board. And like, if people start to see these patterns, you can see the state is picking the winners and losers. Yeah. And Canadians, Canadians like myself, Canadians whose relatives came over either on the land bridge or hundreds of years ago, we are not the ones who are the government winners right now. We are going to be crushed if most Canadians don't awaken. Most people need to awaken, and people don't need to agree on everything, but they need to agree on the fact that our managerial class is completely infiltrated, and that they are not working for us, and that we need to develop some strategies to take our country back and to restore our institutions before it's too late.
It's too late.
Oh God!
Sorry. It's never too late. It's never too late. Read about
Ashley
England.
has her moments.
I'm here to cheerlead. Read about England. Before Queen Victoria, there were child prostitutes. I think something like 20 or 30% of the female population were prostituting themselves at that point. It was absolute degeneracy all over England.
Well, they're not doing very well right now, gotta say. I don't know,
but there was a period. There was a period of correction where it was much, much better, right? So history isn't a continuous line forward or back. It goes up and down. And right now, I think that we're in a period where it's got to get a little bit worse before it gets better. But
come on, pendulum, swing
I can see we've got like the battle of the red or the black pill versus the white pill. We've got white pill Natasha and black pill Ashley.
I know. Usually I'm white pilled, but I don't know.
I think Tammy and I, and maybe Dave, we're basically gray pilled at this point.
What's gray pilled?
We're a little bit in between.
I'm pretty gray pilled for sure, but I don't know.
This moment right now, you sound pretty black pilled.
Yeah.
You're screw this. Everything's over. We're done.
Yeah. Well, all of the institutions need to be, I probably can't even say what I want to say because
don't
people
say
need to read between the lines.
Yeah, it'll shut down the broadcast completely. But anyways,
basically what Ash wants to say is,
I'm just kidding, YouTube.
She just wants to say, flood it again. Okay, just get it over with.
Send the asteroid.
Yeah.
But you have to think that on the other side, Ash, like, you used to be a progressive. this is what gives me so much hope, because I've had identical politics
You're
from the time
welcome.
I've been like 15 years old, right? Like I've had the same opinions for like 30 years.
Yeah.
So for me to actually be having conversations with tons of people who agree with me is not something I ever experienced in my life
Yeah. With someone who
until the COVID
actually
regime.
voted for Trudeau. That's me.
Okay, we didn't need to know that. That was
No,
very painful to hear.
we already knew that. We knew
But
that.
you
We
love
knew
me
that.
anyways.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ash.
we still took her in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
boy.
everybody. I am sorry.
Well, at least you admit it and you apologize, and that's all we ask for.
Yes. Yeah, it is
Oh,
true.
It's partly
But
why
yeah,
I'm
so
so
that's
black-pilled, because I know how far we have to go, because there's so many more of me.
oh
yeah, but
God.
you should read this article. I didn't send it to Jamie, but I'll share it after. It's from the Mises Institute, and it's called The Remnant, I think, and it's about how there doesn't need to be a plurality of people who think a certain way in order to have massive social change. It just needs to be, maybe 30% of the population, because
Right,
most people are sheep,
Yes.
and so they're just going to follow the remnant, right?
right.
So
That'd be like the
when
100th monkey effect, right, Tammy?
I
Yeah.
don't know what that is.
Oh, you should look that up. But yes, it's very, very similar.
Yeah, so that gives me hope, because honestly, like I am one of those people who, like, what does Brett Sears say about me? I carry a purse and I scatter red pills everywhere I go.
I love that.
So, so like any chance that I have, like if I'm speaking to a clerk, and like a clerk mentioned the other day, a cashier more specifically, like, oh, that's so expensive. I feel so badly for you for having to pay for that for some food. And I said, yeah, I mean, it's Trudeau's Canada, right? So that prompted like a little conversation, but I never, ever, ever miss an opportunity to try and connect the dots for people. And
Natasha,
I've
would
yeah,
you say that you're a bigger drug dealer than Trudeau?
I think I might be.
Give out those red pills. Red pills over fentanyl.
Yeah,
Oh God.
I think I might be. It's all free. It's all free. My
It's
rentals
all
are free.
free.
Just come. It's a safe supply.
Safe and effective.
Yeah, it's a
Safe
safer
and
supply than the other.
effective.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to interject.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
man.
perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree though. Any opportunity you get to like throw in something here and there with people that you just meet randomly wherever, yeah, I take those opportunities any chance I can.
Yeah, I've started doing that too. And you can have
And
some
how does
great
it go?
conversations that way.
You
How does
can.
it how does it go for you? Because for me, I've never had someone be angry or hostile with me ever when I've done it. So I'm wondering about you two.
I haven't experienced that yet either. The only uncomfortable conversation I really had, like probably, was where I posted about it last week with the old friend that I ran into, when she
Oh,
gave
the
me
kook.
the kook that gave me her nonsense reason about why she got the COVID jab.
Yeah,
Hey,
if she takes an Advil, then she has to take fentanyl, right? Like she doesn't
right?
get to pick. You don't get to pick.
Who is she to think
How
for
dare
You know,
she?
herself?
if you take a Tylenol, you're getting chemo. Okay, that's called the science. Trademark.
Exactly, exactly. But it wasn't hostile. But she gave a little pushback. Was refusing to actually see what the fuck I was saying. But whatever, I still said it.
Yeah, you still said it, and it was still okay, right?
Exactly. Nobody
And
got hurt.
Tammy, you said that you've been red pilling people from the start, like over masking and whatever, and you always had like a great response to it.
Oh, Tammy's a
Yeah.
big drug dealer too.
I've got like a 99% success rate. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I
That's
am
good.
like anytime I get the chance, I don't care if like I'm in the line at the grocery store or what I am doing, I'll just say it. I don't
Mhm.
care anymore.
I think that's important, though, like everyday conversation, you know?
So, quick story before I shut things down here. I was at a baby shower today, and this is somebody from my husband's side of the family, and they have a cousin, aunt. I'm not exactly sure, who's a little bit off the rails. And a lot of members of the family like to, talk about how she's a basket case, for example, right? But here's the thing: she is a conspiracy theorist. She is a basket case. I will admit that, yes. It's only because her approach is very aggressive, right? The way she is, she's just in your face. She's very aggressive about it. But she's not wrong. The things that she's saying, she's not wrong. Like, I agree with almost 100% of what this woman says. She wasn't there at this event, but people brought her up. And I took that opportunity to, politely, in a non-aggressive kind of way, point out the fact that maybe her approach is not the right way, but she's not wrong. And nobody challenged me. Now, my husband did joke and say that now his family probably thinks that I'm insane, but because I even said, I was like, I myself am a conspiracy realist and I am proud of it, but I wasn't aggressive about it. Right. And I hope that they saw that people who have the same views and thoughts as her can come across in a different light and like bring that information to them in a different way that actually doesn't make them feel like they need to defend something, and that maybe they will walk away and actually listen.
I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So
I think so too. And it makes me think, I think you've talked about this topic as well on the broadcast, because I think I've listened to almost all the shows, if not all, certainly like 90%. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Yay.
But I think you covered Epstein, or maybe you didn't, or just alluded to it. But one of the first times I heard about Epstein was from someone I'm close with who is half crazy, but very, very smart. And half the time is wrong and half the time is right. And so this person told me about Epstein's Island. And this was in the day of dial-up, where you could reach the end of a Google search. And it wasn't because Google was scrubbing the results. Like, it was because there just wasn't that much on the internet yet. So I went down the rabbit hole because I thought, okay, well, if this is true, then maybe I can find the flight logs. And you could find them back then. And you could find the name of the plane, Lolita Express and the rest of it. And you could see all the names. And then I had started researching that. And I was like, well, this is true. So even though she's pretty zany, her approach was never nasty. And so I'd be interested. And so I would always end up researching different things she would discuss with me. So I think as long as people, it's hard though. I understand why people do get aggressive sometimes, because usually if you're telling people new information and it's shocking, it's very alienating. And so a reaction that people have to being alienated, like one of the typical responses is hostility.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to be in the proper frame of mind to have discussions with people where you're able to take a few hits, like a few nasty remarks, to push through the conversation and keep cool. And then usually they may not agree, they may agree, but they'll probably at the very least go away and read. And something that I think is beautiful is when, you have a discussion with a loved one, they say something nasty to you about the topic, and then like a year later, they're making the same arguments that you made to them initially. Like it's so satisfying. It's so nice, and you almost never get an I'm sorry, but to me, that's enough.
Yeah. Something that you kind of reminded me of in talking about that, Natasha, is the idea that moderates or centrists tend to get a bad rap by maybe not having, let's say, enough of an opinion on a subject, that people get upset that maybe they don't fully agree with them, or they don't fully disagree with the other side. And I do think that's a problem, because it's okay to not be sure about something, but to be receptive to ideas. And so some people who want you to believe one thing or the other, they don't like that you're kind of in between. And I think that's a problem, because it's okay to question things, and it's okay to not be completely on board one way or the other, but just be a little bit on the fence sometimes, because we don't know what the truth is anymore. It's so hard to tell. And I have a problem with people who frankly shit on people who don't come out and have an opinion right away on something, where, like, how are we supposed to know? Like, the only way we can figure things out is by continuing to have conversations and gather information. And I'm not okay with people who aren't who don't like people not like picking a side right away. Like, how else are we supposed to learn? Because we used to be able to trust our sources, and now we can't anymore. So
that's right.
It's true.
Yeah. And so, like, hearing you talk about kind of like there's this moderate in between, and I think these are the people that we need to continue to try to reach and to open the conversation with, because there are so many people out there who have no idea what the fuck is going on, but they don't know who to believe. And like, we always love to joke on this podcast about being tinfoil hatters, but really, like, we come from different walks of life, and we've all come to certain conclusions at different at different parts of the whole COVID regime. And so there are a lot of people who don't know what's going on, and I think they'd be willing to listen. And so to have, like, moderate people who are willing to talk about these things without being, like, completely kooky is very, very important right now.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think I'm always moderate, though. I'm pretty right-wing nut job. Like, I go as far as I can, and I want people to agree with me, and I get provoked when they don't. But I play a
you're
long
a firecracker.
game. I play a long game, so I'm willing to, like, let them be wrong for a while. But I also tend to tell people that I think they're wrong. When you're describing that, I was like, I think that describes me.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
At least 50% of the time.
Well, as we heard throughout this entire episode, there is never a shortage of crazy going on to discuss.
Yes.
But for tonight, I'd say let's end it off there. Ladies and Dave, any final thoughts on all things covered this evening?
Ladies first.
Keep red pilling the children.
Yes.
Agreed.
That's it. Those are the final thoughts.
I'd just like to say thanks so much for coming on, Natasha. We've met in person, so it was a pleasure meeting you then, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you behind the scenes, in group chats and DMs, and it's so lovely to be able to speak with you on the podcast. So I was very excited when you came on, when Sue said that she invited you on. And I really think you have an amazing voice out there. So keep doing what you're doing. You're such a lovely person. And it was so great to talk with you tonight.
And I absolutely echo what Ash just said.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to meet you. We haven't met in real life, so
yeah,
it was nice to meet you and Dave as well. And yeah, thank you for
nice to meet you as well.
Thanks for calling me lovely, Ash. People tend it's funny because people tend to think I'm, like, really, really mean because of my ex, but, like, what they don't understand is half the time when I'm writing remarks, like, I'm laughing, like, I think it's funny. Like, I like to joke around, but that's sometimes lost in the translation a little bit, I guess. But I'm actually, like, a pretty relaxed person in real life.
Yeah, you're
I'm
a lovely, you're a lovely firecracker.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I like my women feisty. Like, I like feisty women, I come from a long line of feisty women, and I don't know. I like my men calm and reliable, and my women feisty.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. Dave, any final thoughts from you?
No, thank you for coming on. And final thought is, I don't if it's positive and if it has good intentions, there's no such thing as too early. So keep red pilling
Yeah.
those kids.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me, Suze. Keep up the good work, Broads and Jamie.
Of course. Tammy,
Yes.
you are up next, my friend. What are we talking about next week?
We are talking about the gateway process.
Ooh.
Dun, dun,
It has been a minute since I took us down some weird rabbit hole. So I was like, what weirdness could I get into next week? And I have decided it's going to be the gateway process.
Awesome.
And we are going to have Wiretap Media joining us because he is also a huge fan of the gateway process and just has quite a lot of knowledge on it and some opinions on it. So I have asked him to join us. So it'll be his second time actually coming on the show, which is fun.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that. Natasha, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been an absolute blast, as I knew it would be. Please, come back and chat with us again anytime. I always enjoy speaking with you, your take on things. You'll keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks,
Everyone
Natasha.
listening, if you haven't checked out Natasha's page, please do so and give her a follow. She's got a great page. You won't be disappointed, I promise. Her handle on X is at Natasha Montreal. On that note, thank you everyone for listening to yet another episode of Bigoting Harder on the broadcast. Catch you all next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
God bless.